Battle of the Atom Part 6 begins with Magic, young Hank, and young Bobby face to face with the X-Men of the future. There are some joyous reunions, like Colossus and Magic, before Jubilee, who now goes by the name Wolverine, says they mustn't tamper further with the time stream. Young Hank demands that these future X-Men help them deal with Zorn and her future X-Men. This new group finally relent and decide to take a vote. The rest of the issue shows how the world of the future came to be. In an attempt to take mutants to the next level, Zorn convinced Dazzler to run for president. Dazzler actually wins, and mutant kind is overjoyed. X-Men everywhere see her election as the culmination of all their hard work and sacrifice. Mutants like Hank McCoy are on hand to witness her victory speech. Tragically, all they can do is watch when Dazzler is killed by an energy blast. The entire National Mall comes under an attack by demon-like creatures. In the aftermath, Hank McCoy is heartbroken. He comes to accept that no matter how hard they try, mutants will always be hated. The issue ends in the present with Cyclops and his X-Men returning to their base after the events of Battle of the Atom Part 5. They stop in their tracks when Magic portals in and introduces them to the real X-Men of the future.
Surprise, surprise, we have another X-Team come to the present from the future. Oh my god, what do you think?
I don't know why we're surprised at this point, because that's apparently all Marvel goes with. Time travel.
It has seemed like that for like the last, year or so? Ever since Marvel Now, at least. But I feel like the storyline has kind of jumped the shark for me, where it's just getting completely ridiculous. I mean, okay, I was okay with the all-new X-Men. I started really liking them. And then they introduced this other X-Team from the future, and so that was kind of interesting.
Zorn's team.
And now we have this third team, and I honestly have no idea where the storyline is going, and it's kind of just getting ridiculous.
I can see where you're coming from. One of my big problems with this issue is that it almost exclusively focused on this brand new team of future X-Men. You know, Colossus and his gang. I mean, we didn't even see a Jean Grey in this issue.
And what's an X-Men title these days without a Jean Grey showing up? I think by introducing this whole new X-Men team, it just creates way too many players. I know the Infinity event right now seems like it's a huge scope and everything, and there's a lot of different characters, but I think this one is actually more cluttered because more of the characters are important.
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. Like, in Infinity, there's a ton of characters, but for the most part, a lot of them don't matter. Like Cannonball, Sunspot, they're not that important.
No. For me, I kind of like suspense in a storyline, and you can't really build suspense when you have no conceivable way of knowing what to expect.
Yeah, this reminds me so much of Age of Ultron, which Bendis also wrote, where, you know, it's a 10-issue series, and you get to, like, issue 7 or 8, and he's still introducing new characters.
You're right, it's so similar to Age of Ultron because in, I think, issue 7, that's where we see the new Defenders from the future that wasn't really a future because of what Wolverine did eventually. And so what should we expect from this group?
Really hard to say, but considering they got a whole issue just on their history, hopefully they have some impact. We saw President Dazzler, and what did you think of her? I mean, I had some mixed feelings.
That was actually my favorite part of this issue, where we got to see President Dazzler run for office. I was actually wondering, is that Mystique?
I was thinking the exact same thing, but as soon as she gets killed and kind of doesn't revert to her natural form, I think it's safe to assume that was the real Dazzler.
That's a really good point.
I was kind of baffled by how she could be even elected president based on just her credentials. The two things they listed were that she was an ex-pop star and that she worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't really feel like the American public is stupid enough to vote for somebody like that for president. Maybe I'm wrong, but you're saying Mutantdom didn't have a stronger candidate than her?
Well, maybe
Hank McCoy was a congressman.
Yeah, but look at Hank McCoy is not photogenic in any way, especially with his like weird horn on one side, and Dazzler is incredibly photogenic.
True, but reasonably unqualified in my opinion.
She doesn't have any blemishes, right? So you can sort of pitch that as she worked for the government with S.H.I.E.L.D., and she's a pop star. She cares about the people. I don't know.
Kind of moving past that, she does get killed, and it's like a bunch of demon forces or
dragons flying around. I was completely baffled. I mean, besides the amazing artwork that was that page and her dying with the fire through her, I guess. But it's really baffling where this is coming from.
The only possible speculation I could make is that it has something to do with like the forces of hell, or maybe demons coming through limbo or something like that. That way it would still have some X-Men connection without being too ridiculous.
Hank seems to blame this on people that hate mutants, but it's not really the Sentinels because they seem to control the Sentinels now. And so I guess when you can't go technology, you go low-tech and you go with demons.
Yeah, bringing up Hank's line, he says, "It's never different. 2 steps forward, 7 steps back. We're fools. We are absolute fools."
It adds a whole new perspective on what the Zorn's X-Men group is actually there to do. Maybe they're a bit more jaded. All we saw of the future was the Dazzler scene, which was obviously an attack on mutants. But we also saw the school, which seemed to be functional and looked really nice, almost like a paradise. So we're not exactly sure how bad the future really is.
True. As a grade, though, for Part 6 of Battle of the Atom, what would you give it?
I'm going to give this a 2.5 out of 5. I really did enjoy the art. I thought it was absolutely great, but I'm kind of at my wit's end for how many more X teams I can really take before I completely lose interest in this.
I'm going to give it a 2.5 as well. It didn't really progress the story at all. As Kurt said, all it did was really introduce more new characters.
Thanks for watching B3 Comics' review of All New X-Men number 17, Battle of the Atom Part 6. Before we go, we have a question for you.
So we thought that Dazzler wouldn't be the best choice for a mutant president. Who do you think would be a better choice?
I would go with Warren Worthington. He's got money and he's incredibly photogenic.
Personally, I think I'd go with Kitty Pryde. She is also photogenic, and her power is very defensive, which I think people would respond to.
We want to hear your answers. Put them in the comments below. If you like what you saw, give us a thumbs up.